बिहम्दि रब्बिका वस्तगफिर इन्नहु कान तव्वाबा। शुरू अल्लाह के नाम से जो बड़ा मेहरबान और निहायत रहम वाला है। जब अल्लाह की मदद और फतह आ जाए और तुम लोगों को देख लो कि वो फौज दर फौज अल्लाह के दीन में दाखिल हो रहे हैं, तो अपने परवरदिगार की हम्द के साथ उसकी तस्बीह करो और उससे मग़फ़िरत मांगो। बेशक वो बहुत माफ करने वाला है। सदाकल्लाहुल अज़ीम।
जज़ाकल्लाह।
So today we have the honor of our Provincial Minister for Punjab and Housing, Urban Development and Public Health Engineering, Mia Mahmood Rashid, who is here with us as the chair of session. During his tenure, the minister has been engaged in encouraging sustainable and affordable practices and activities in the region.
प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर अब्दुर्रहमान और डॉक्टर यास्मीन मान की दावत पर आज के इस इंटरनेशनल फोरम की सदारत करना मेरे लिए एक एज़ाज़ की बात है। और सच्ची बात यह है कि आर्किटेक्चर जो है ये कोई नया सब्जेक्ट नहीं है। हज़ारों साल पुरानी इमारत को जब हम देखते हैं और तामीरात को देखते हैं तो इंसानी अक्ल जो है वो दंग रह जाती है कि आज से कितना अर्सा पहले अपने अपने दौर में कितने बाकमाल आर्किटेक्ट थे और उनके जो तामीरात हैं, उनका जो फ़न है, उसके बारे में अब तक इंटरनेशनली लोग जो है वो तहकीकात कर रहे हैं और रिसर्च कर रहे हैं। और मैं ये समझता हूँ कि हमारे यहाँ पाकिस्तान के अंदर ज़्यादातर जो है वो आर्किटेक्चर का एक कमर्शियल साइड जो है उसको पेश नज़र रखा गया है। अब बात की है आज के दौर में ख़ास तौर पर जो एक आईटी का दौर है जिसमें चीज़ें इंतहाई आसान भी आईटी ने बना दी हैं और तेज़ रफ्तार भी कर दी हैं। तो तो इसमें हमें सिर्फ इसके कमर्शियल आस्पेक्ट के बजाय आम आदमी की ज़रूरत को जो है वो पेश नज़र रख कर भी काम करना होगा। ख़ास तौर पर हमारे यहाँ 70% जो हमारे लोग हैं वो लोअर मिडिल क्लास और देहातों में बसने वाले लोग हैं। लेकिन बहुत कम ऐसा हमें देखने में आता है कि आम आदमी के लिए जिस तरह हमारे यहाँ पाकिस्तान में वज़ीर-ए-आज़म पाकिस्तान ने एक इनिशिएटिव लिया है और ये हिस्ट्री में पहली दफ़ा पाकिस्तान की हिस्ट्री में लो कॉस्ट हाउसिंग, अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग, उसके ऊपर इतना भरपूर तरीके से काम हो रहा है। और प्राइम मिनिस्टर का भी ये विज़न है कि हम नौजवान जो आर्किटेक्ट हैं और तामीरात के शोबे को और आर्किटेक्चर के शोबे को उन्होंने कोशिश की है कि हर जगह पर इन्हें इनका जायज़ मुकाम भी दिलाया जाए और आम आदमी की जो ज़रूरत है उसको सामने रखते हुए ये चीज़ों को डिज़ाइन करें। और इस बात की ज़रूरत है कि आइंदा जो हमारा ये जो कोर्स है इसमें हम रिसर्च हो, फैकल्टी हो और बाकी चीज़ों के अंदर भी इन लोगों का ख़्याल रखें कि इनकी ज़रूरियात क्या हैं और किस तरह से उन ज़रूरियात को पूरा किया जा सकता है। वैसे तो हमारे तमाम इस वक्त जो यूनिवर्सिटीज़ और कॉलेजेस में किसी वक्त में एक आध कॉलेज के अलावा यहाँ आर्किटेक्चर का मज़मून किसी जगह नहीं पढ़ाया जाता था, लेकिन आज अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह पाकिस्तान में जो बड़ी यूनिवर्सिटियाँ हैं, कॉलेजेस हैं, उसमें इस सब्जेक्ट को पढ़ाया भी जा रहा है। मैं ख़ास तौर पर लाहौर कॉलेज फॉर वुमेन यूनिवर्सिटी उसकी जो वाइस चांसलर हैं बुशरा मिर्ज़ा साहिबा, मैं उनका शुक्रिया अदा करता हूँ और उनको मुबारकबाद भी देता हूँ कि उन्होंने जिस तरह से इंटरनेशनल जो लेवल की और मेयार की सहूलतें अपने स्टूडेंट्स को मुहैया की हैं, वो दूसरे तालीमी अदारों के लिए भी मिशले राह हैं। और मैं तवक्को रखता हूँ कि आइंदा आने वाले दिनों में हम इस जो एक इग्नोर्ड हमारा शोबा है इसको मद्देनज़र रखते हुए आर्किटेक्चर के अंदर आम आदमी की ज़रूरियात को भी मद्देनज़र रखते हुए अपना निसाब और फैकल्टी को तरतीब देंगे। बहुत शुक्रिया।
Architecture engages the culture's deepest social values and expresses them in material and static form. It is one of the most complexly negotiated and globally recognized cultural practice, both an academic subject and a professional career. Its production involves all of the technical, aesthetic, political, and economic issues at play within a given society. So please stay with us as we examine with our team of speakers how current architecture and architects engage, meditate, and express complex aspirations through architectural pedagogy. But before we formally start the event, I would like to invite Dr. Yasmin Mia, Head of the Architecture Department, Lahore College of Women University, for her welcome note.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. On behalf of students and faculty of Architecture Department at Lahore College for Women University, I welcome all the esteemed speakers, Honorable Fraternity of Architecture, Chairman PCATP, senior representatives from administration of LCW, and my very dear students. I find an absolute pleasure to be organizing this forum titled Architectural Pedagogy, in collaboration with Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, with the strategic focus on need of architectural practice in Pakistan in an overall preview of international standards for sustainability. Giving a brief intro about Lahore College for Women University, I am profoundly honored to share that we are Asia's largest women university with 15,000 female students enrolled here under 40 academic departments. The high standards of education and research here are a standard and landmark in itself that the younger generation looks forward to achieve. The research and industry academia combined ventures are under energetic patronage of international and national organizations. The multi-dimensional perspective of training, educating, and grooming the women folk of the country is a standard teaching objective with us. Architecture department flourished here in last 10 years and has deliberated an absolute success competing in merit and quality of architectural education in a pertinent manner of industry academia, interdisciplinary resources, and collaborations with national and international academic partners. Executes a full-fledged, flourished course of education to produce architects to meet requirements of a healthy and sustainable built environment. The successful contribution of our graduates, alumni, departmental research groups, and faculty development programs are few indicators in the list of our achievements. To sum up, I extend my heartfelt gratitude for the patronage of Professor Dr. Abdul Rahman, who has been the most concrete support to this department since beginning. In spite of his commitments and a very scheduled routine, he has always been the most promising pillar of this department right from the start. So today I congratulate all my students and faculty upon the patronage by our visionary and promising academician, Professor Dr. Abdul Rahman Saab, for organizing, for coordinating, and for always encouraging us in the right direction. Thank you very much. Now I hand over the session to Ms. Sana Alim for a successful proceeding ahead. Thank you very much.
So our first speaker is an architect, an urban designer, and an associate professor at Morgan State University, USA, School of Architecture and Planning. She has worked with UNESCO Paris, ICC ROM Rome, Getty Center LA, Qatar International Research Fund Doha, as an heritage conservation expert. Please welcome Dr. Samia Rab.
Can you hear me? Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Okay, I wasn't sure if you could hear me. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and shukriya bahut for this gracious invitation. And मैं थोड़ा सा time लूँगी. मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा कि not only the introduction, but also Mr. Mia Mohammed Rashid की बातें के लोगों का ख्याल रखना चाहिए. So my presentation will be about how architects can co-design with people, and that's the crux of the presentation. And also थोड़ा सा मैं time लूँगी. हम सबको पता है कि काफ़ी चीज़ें change हो रही हैं दुनिया में, not only because of the demands of people that they want the change, but also जो pandemic एक हमारे साथ गुजर रहा है, जो हमारा साथी है इस वक्त, उसकी वजह से भी architectural pedagogy काफ़ी change हो रही है. So इन दो नज़रियों को साथ रखते हुए, I would like to kind of present my presentation. I think I can share the presentation. All right. Let me share. There. अब मुझे बता दें कि आपको नज़र आ रहा है या नहीं.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, great. Full screen नज़र आ रहा है आपको कि?
You have to do the full screen because right now I can only see your PowerPoint. Yeah, now it's
Okay.
good. Thank
अब ठीक है?
Yes, it's good. It's good. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Okay. So एक Buckminster Fuller, he was an architect practicing in 1920s and writing about it. He made a very important reference to our planet Earth as if it is a spaceship. So आजकल तो मार्स में भी बात काफी लोग जा रहे हैं, जेफ बेजोस भी तैयार हैं जाने के लिए, सब तैयार हो रहे हैं मार्स जाने के लिए. So imagine कि आप एक रॉकेट शिप में बैठे हैं और बाहर की हवा जो है वो बिल्कुल इस तरीके की नहीं है कि आप उसमें रह सकें. So क्या होगा? ये 1920 में बकमिस्टर फुलर ने हम सबको सोचने का बोला था कि अर्थ के रिसोर्सेस बहुत कम हैं और हमें मिल के इनको शेयर करना है. अदरवाइज ऑक्सीजन is going to be a problem even on planet Earth, just as it is a problem when we go sit in a rocket and go to Mars. Outside, there is no way of living. Only inside, there is a way of living. So Earth and its resources allow us to live without oxygen masks. But that's only going to continue if we behave. So the UN established the sustainable development goals to protect the oxygen, most important, water, second most important, and then food, third most important resource on our planet. जिसके बगैर किसी का गुजारा नहीं. Architecture तो छोड़ें. So this kind of mentality we have to start bringing seriously in pedagogy, thinking of Earth as a spaceship, thinking of the world as a shared resource so that the whole 100% of humanity and not the richest can survive. He also created a lot of innovative designs. It's not like he wasn't designing. He was definitely designing, but he had a mentality of thinking of the world as a cohesive place where everyone needs to share the resources equitably in an equal manner. Humanity, everyone is equal. Unfortunately, Buckminster Fuller didn't really get into curriculum very seriously. Pedagogy ne kafi usko seriously nahi liya. We got distracted by concepts of beauty, architecture that is beautiful. We started defining beauty at the cost of environment. So if we need to realign architectural pedagogy, we need to really start thinking scientifically. So which sciences relate to architecture? At the very core essence, people will say that structures and engineering, that is very true. Structures and engineering is aligned, but so is neuroscience. If we're going to design for humanity, and agar hum sab logon ka khayal rakh ke design karenge, not just our clients who are paying our fee, but also users, people who will live in the buildings we design, and people who will benefit from its beauty as we design it. We shouldn't be designing for each other. Architects should not be designing for architects or their clients. They need to design for the entire 100% of humanity. So how do we understand what is humanity? Neuroscience is an emerging discipline that is allowing us to understand what beauty means to a lay public. How do we collect the data around beauty? What do general public find beautiful? People who have not gone into art museums and not been cultivated. So one thing you have to keep in mind is that I am a first generation college goer in my family. When I entered National College of Arts, I still remember specifically that I was overwhelmed by how prepared my class fellows were. I could barely spell the word architecture. I had to really work on it. From Balochistan, from Quetta, my mamus gave me permission to go to Lahore because they thought I was going for agriculture. And they said, okay, chalo ladki पढ़ लिख के वापस आएगी तो हमारे farm का जरा scientific वो हो जाएगा कारोबार. So मैं agriculture करने चली थी from perspective of my family. So when I entered NCA, all my class fellows, they already had visited Rome and Paris, and they knew what architecture was or what it should be. So all that in the idea that beauty is something that is an elite appreciation is completely erroneous, I think. And we need to really start realigning our notion of beauty from the perspective of what does a lay public find beautiful in the environment. and neurosciences has done a lot of interesting stuff. So one of the courses that I teach along with urban design is design and human behavior. And teaching this course during the pandemic was quite a challenge because we couldn't meet students, right? So I pivoted to really change the way I think about architecture and how my students pursued architecture in studios designing for imaginary clients, for imaginary sites. So most important part of this course was to identify behavioral issues, to design behavioral change, to adjust physical elements in your room and measure how that change and adjustment changed your behavior. So I'm sure my colleagues would understand. All of us were teaching online, and we are right now in a Zoom meeting, webinar, some things that are good that are happening during the pandemic. But notice how many people, if you look at the whole screen of shots, how many people have their videos off? A lot, right? So I was faced with that trauma as well when I was teaching. No student was opening up their videos. So I was like, okay, what happened? March 9th up until now, we were in the classroom. Now we are in webinar. Why aren't you opening your Zoom? As a designer, as an architect, I had very easily adjusted, found myself a 4x4 corner in a room and created an environment that I was fine with exposing to the public. My students didn't have that capacity. So what I did is I asked them to really, this is what we were March 3rd, last meeting in 2020. And this is what I saw, just a few handful of students showing their screens. And I couldn't teach like that because I had to see people's human beings in front of me. That's what I was used to. That's what I signed up for. So how do I take this and create architecture? So I started showing them how to zone your space, how to create different zones in the room. Forget about architecture. Just take care of your human body in a room. Design a corner in a room. Design the room in a house. Design the house in a city. Design a city in the world. Design the world in the planet. So that scaling has to be adjusted into the curriculum. So a place that you can feel proud of, a place that you can actually recognize as something that is powerful, that belongs to you, the secret power that you can design within, and then you can expose yourself to. So I showed them my own room, how I adjusted a bedroom and made a workplace out of it, planning, action, and then also for resting. These aspects and this pivoting to a new way of teaching students architecture was very essential, because when you know yourself, what makes you happy and presentable to the public, it has a lot to do with the concept of Zahar and the Batin. When your Zahar and the Batin are in alignment, you are a happy human being. When you are a happy human being, you want others to be happy as well through your design. And that link was a very important link. So this is an example from a student, her before and after. She had a kid's room. She was sharing, she had grown up in that room and she was feeling uncomfortable presenting it. So through that assignment, within that course, she changed. She literally painted the walls and she changed her environment, and she felt like she could present it. And then she was fine with everything. This is another example of another student who took her own kitchen, where that was the only place. Unlike the other student, this student didn't have a room to herself. She was zooming in from her kitchen. Constantly, her family was going through the kitchen while she was in classes. So she tweaked her shelves and arranged it in a way that she created small alcove for her personal space, backing towards the wall, and then she was able to present herself through the Zoom. So these kind of ideas of changing how you behave within a setting has a major implication. And the activity of putting your body, mind in the space in alignment has a very important relationship to urban design, because this is the same body that we take outside the room, outside the house, into the urban realm, right? How do we collect data on ourselves? There are many ways of doing it. This is just one way that is created. Dear Data, this is available on the website. Two girls from two different parts of the world, they wanted to remain connected to each other, and they created this way of sharing their daily data, whether they were feeling calm, excited, anxious, confused, irritated. They were trying to
Yeah.
relate all of these emotions to each other. So, physically creating, modifying a space, noting the behavioral changes, adjusting for a specific behavior. If we can teach our students that personally, from their own perspective, the advantages of that are that their own human body they will be in control of. There is a lot of things we do unknowingly. Our body, when we sit in a chair, if the chair does not have a backing like this, if the chair is the typical chair, our alignment is completely disaligned. Our bodies remarkably, and this is a remarkable research that was published in the Journal of Bodywork and Movement Therapy, which shows that the people in New Guinea who never sat on the chair had a better profile than adults who had lived on chair. So the impact of a chair on the human body, if we start preparing our students to understand that the human body, and this article is completely about posture and how the chair has been designed to become a health hazard. So looking at all of these aspects, we have to understand that we are our own greatest artifact. We can shape our body, we can shape our mind in an environment that makes us happy, complete, full. If we can understand that, we can take that understanding and then we are ready to listen to lay public, how and what makes them happy. And then we can design for their holistic environment. How house has human virtues. And this is something coming from Gaston Bachelard's very famous book, The Poetics of Space. It is an instrument with which to confront the cosmos. जब बाहर बारिश होती है हम अंदर घर के भागते घर के अंदर इसलिए जाते हैं because the house protects us. So learning about this idea, learning has to occur through the study of text, but through the kind of environments we create within which we study. Design can alter our capacity for thought, emotion, behavior, and perception of beauty. If we understand how beauty can be cultivated within our own rooms, then we can take that knowledge outside. And these are some examples I shared with my students, how to create different zones, working spaces, living spaces, storage spaces creatively within their work environment. And if they start learning about it, they will understand that perception plays a very important role in defining beauty. What is perception? The line might look like one, the top one is smaller than the lower one. It isn't. It's exactly the same line. It's the arrow's direction that is defining. And if we look at this table, the rectangle is exactly the same rectangle. It's how we perceive it from one angle versus another that makes it look short or big. So we see this, that there is reality and then there is a perception of reality. Are intentional, as Sonia Lemonsky has said, effortful activities have a powerful effect on how happy we are, over and above the effect of our set points and the circumstances in which we find ourselves. And this applies to every single human being in this world. Everyone's gauge of happiness is different. And as architects, we need to first align ourselves to what makes us happy and full and complete. And once we know that, then we can render our services to all of humanity. Our clients are only a vehicle to get a building together. We need to think more than the client. We need to think, who are the users? Um, Another important thing that has happened during the pandemic is that virtual exchange has become possible. I'm now aligning all of my courses with a component where I'm partnering with universities in Japan and the Middle East, and inshallah Pakistan as well, to create a virtual exchange happening within course so that the course material is shared. We all have our knowledge bases, and sharing has become very easy and accessible through virtual exchange. It is a distinct form of both asynchronous and synchronous learning through which we can share our knowledge base. There is Sulaya Global Connect program that I have introduced, as well as, and this is my students sitting in the same space with students in MENA, Middle East and North Africa. And the curriculum was shared, and they learned about each other. It's basically time to start learning about each other. And again, I will end and open the floor for any questions if you have, because I was told that we need to keep our presentations short. So integrating virtual exchange in curricula is a very important way of, most importantly, decolonizing education. We need to really think about what we teach and who we teach. Urban design is the profession that I have chosen within architecture to pursue as practice, and that is what I teach in studios as well. The origins of urban design is in our backyard. Mohenjo-daro, one of the first designed cities in the world, had a public bath in the center of the city. Public facilities were more important and prioritized than private condos. And that shift, we need to decolonize architectural education to take us back to how we designed urban spaces in our own culture so that we can teach the world. We don't have to just learn from the world. We need to close the cycle and teach the world urban design. And that is all. And I will stop share there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samia, for sharing your experience as an educationalist during the pandemic. I think we all appreciate that design a house in the city, design a city in the world should be the motto. And we unanimously agree how the pandemic has changed our behavior altogether during the since the last year. And I think the students will finally get the push to redo their Zoom corners at home following the spatial knowledge shared by you. And it was very intriguing to revisit our historical Mohenjo-daro and figure out that we can learn a lot from our own places and use them in order to design the architecture in the region. We will have a collective question answer session at the end of our presentation. So all those who want to participate in the session and have questions, please send in your questions via comment section under the Facebook Live. Thank you, Dr. Samia. I think I will now proceed with our next speaker. So our next speaker is Amna Shahid. She is currently working in the United Kingdom. She is a gold medalist for the best academic performance, holder of Mehdi Ali Mirza Award for Academic Excellence. She will be sharing her thoughts on shaping the 21st century architects with us. Please welcome Amna Shahid.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you
Amna,
hear me?
I can hear you. I'm going to share my screen for your presentation. Do let me know if you can see it.
Yeah. So I can't see it yet.
Yes, just give me a second. I'm just connecting it with the server.
Yeah, in the meantime, thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor to be a speaker here. And although I graduated from UET, but I did my secondary FSc from Lahore College. So it is such an amazing honor to be a speaker here now and to speak to all of you here. even when I was in the college, it was amazing environment, very dedicated teachers. And yeah, thank you so much for having me here. And thank you so much, Sir Rahman, for giving me the opportunity. And like it was mentioned before, you have always been so proactive in creating forums like these. So thank you so much for that. And my presentation is basically based on the fundamental basic principles that I think are lacking in our architectural pedagogy. It is generally all over the world as well, but especially in Pakistan, we have this problem. So it is going to be a bit more theoretical, and it's not very in-depth, but it will touch upon most of the drawbacks that I feel we need to work on for the next generation. So now if you're having a problem, I can share my screen then. So now can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I shared the screen. Was it not visible? I
No.
shared. Hold on, let me try again. And if not, then you can try with yours. Hold on, let me try again.
Okay.
Amna, can you share your screen?
Yeah, I think I should do that.
Yeah, you can do that.
So now if you stop sharing yours and I can try my own thing.
Yes, that will be great.
Yeah, let me see.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Go ahead. I think there's a technical glitch over here.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, let me just do it.
Okay.
Just trying to make it full screen. Doesn't seem to be working. Okay.
Usually at the bottom, you see these different icons.
Can you see now?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Just a second, let me go back to the thing. Okay, so I got admission in UT in 1994, and at that time there were, in the last few decades, like a couple of decades, there has been a huge increase in the number of architectural institutes. When we started it, there were just a handful, I think 3 in Pakistan, who offered a BArch degree in Pakistan. And now there are 31 institutes. I was checking on the websites, and there are like 31 institutes which are offering a BArch course, and there are 7 more which are offering a BS course in architecture. So such a huge increase in the number of institutes. Obviously, it means that you have to keep a check on the standard of education that is being offered in these institutes as well. And even before that, you have to check how are we enrolling new students in the architectural school. Most of them still rely on FSC results and their the entry test exam results. But unfortunately, that ends up having students in architectural school who do not really have an aptitude for it as well. I have my son in year 8, and he has his friend who already knows he wants to be an architect. So, we don't have that kind of career training in Pakistan or workshops which teach students what the subjects are. And architecture is not like any other engineering form that you can say, I go to UET, and if I get the merit, I will go to chemical or to mechanical or some other department. For architecture, you need to have that passion. So it is about time that we have some updated system of enrollment in our architectural schools, so we can admit students who actually have a passion for the subject as well. Now, the system of education that most of these institutes are following is still the same ready-made imported system that we inherited at the time of partition. And this outdated system has actually created a gap between the education and the practical field work as well. And what has added to that Western module is globalization to a certain extent, because globalization has created this international style of architecture, which everybody seems to be following now, but it lacks a local and cultural aspect to it. And then studio-based pedagogy is another thing that has been at the core of architectural education. But these are based on hypothetical projects, and the students don't really get to understand the actual problems or of a site which are related to the culture context of that particular place. Another thing which I think is lacking is that the role of the architect now has extended to that of being a principal designer and a team leader who coordinates different building disciplines during the construction project. And our students really have no idea regarding that as well. The importance of digital communication, it has kind of revolutionized the field, the education, the whole world actually, but that needs to be made into an integral part of our education system in Pakistan. So we will be just looking at few drawbacks that need attention from both the institutes and the regulating body for architectural pedagogy, especially in Pakistan. So in my view, some of the major problems, like I touched on before, is first of all, it's the admission system, which is highly unsuitable because it does end up admitting students who do not really have an aptitude for architecture. Then we do not focus on students' ability to explore issues that are related to culture and the built environment of a place. And architectural education does not really stress upon the 3 C's of architecture, which is culture, context, and climate. So students do end up ignoring these variables, and they are unable to design buildings which are sensitive to the built environment around them. Then students lack the interaction with the actual site work, field work, or architectural practices, and they're really unprepared for the challenges they face on construction sites or in offices as well. Students are not really introduced to local materials, building techniques, and local crafts in Pakistan. Then they obviously are unaware of what is the role of an architect as a principal designer in nowadays construction industry, especially on an international scale. Then the updated training of computer-aided design software is still not made an essential part of studio work. Students are not made to understand the relationship between an international style of architecture and the vernacular style that we have in Pakistan. And lastly, it is a very important factor, I think, which is missed and overlooked by our institute, is to develop a sense of social responsibility and awareness in the students. Like our housing minister said, we are not designing for the people, we are designing for the elites. And this is what the students are taught as well nowadays. So if you just talk about globalization for a bit, if you see the image on the right, this is what seems to be happening all over the world nowadays. We have this international style of architecture, which has standardized materials, it has standardized the building techniques, it has standardized the architectural feature. And this international style certainly lacks tradition and the local character. And this phenomena has challenged our potential to attain a climate responsive architecture. It's very evident in the residential architecture of Pakistan nowadays, where we are using energy intensive methods to create a comfortable built environment rather than using passive techniques. And it is putting a lot of load on the natural resources as well. So opposite to the idea of globalization is the idea of critical regionalism, which is basically an approach to architecture that strives to counter the placelessness and the lack of identity of a style. You know, in the previous slide, I showed you that you have these international style buildings. And if you look at a building in a magazine, you won't be able to tell which place it belongs to or which country it belongs to. So critical regionalism is the concept that we need to introduce to students, because it is a modern tradition of architecture which is tied to the geographical and the cultural context of the place. It is a progressive approach towards architecture, which is going to mediate between the global and the local languages of architecture. And probably you can see from the image below how we need to get into, you know, like from this and this to an intermediate zone where we can harness the benefits of both the international style and our own vernacular style for the benefit of people. So we need to introduce this to our students, what is the international style and how we can use only the advantages of it to produce better designs and climate responsive designs in our country or in Pakistan. So further to the concept of critical regionalism is the 3 C's of architecture, which is the climate, context, and culture. And these are the essential variables which the architectural studio should make as a basis for all design studies. Students do need the creative ability, the freedom to come up with innovative solutions, but they should assume these as the limiting boundaries for regardless of the scale and the complexity of the design projects which are presented to them. And this will give rise to designs which are unique to a geographical location. So you will look at a building and you will be able to say that, yes, this building belongs to Pakistan, or it cannot be anywhere else in the world. Then sustainable design training aimed at net zero carbon buildings. This certainly is the most important thing that we need to include in our architectural pedagogy. All of you probably have read about the heat wave in Canada today. So individual and communities all over the world are facing extreme climate conditions because of climate change, and the weather events are becoming more and more frequent. So the urge for a more sustainable environment to tackle climate change is widely accepted. As of 2015, you will be surprised to know that 39% of all global energy-related carbon dioxide emissions were due to the construction industry. And 28% of this was just because of the day-to-day energy needs of building, which is like heating, cooling, and lighting of the buildings. So it is the need of the moment that we train our students to tackle these problems and train them in how to achieve net zero carbon footprints. So presently, the construction industry is combining a fabric first approach, which is like adopting passive how techniques and having carbon offsetting techniques for achieving a net zero carbon target. So this is why in the architectural studios, we need to prioritize training of our young architects so they can come up with innovative solutions in form of vertical farming, air purifying towers, sustainable building designs, which are aimed at net zero carbons. So we need to teach them in the studios now because the industry is changing according to that. Sorry, Sana, can you mute the other participants because there is a lot of disturbance. Then the next is the involvement in conservation project, because architecture is a combination of both theoretical and practical knowledge. And historically, architects were master builders who had expertise in traditional building craft. But as the formal schools of architecture developed in the box art period, the architectural education kind of moved away from the hands-on knowledge or experience, and eventually the traditional techniques were kind of taken out of the architectural pedagogy. So this lack of hands-on knowledge of the building craft certainly has an impact on the design ability of students, especially when they are dealing with projects which are related to built heritage. So it is vital that architectural students are involved in conservation projects at different levels. This will not only increase their knowledge of heritage and local craft, but it will always also prove to be an asset for future, because we will have experienced professionals who can deal with conservation projects. And probably Dr. Rahman would agree to that, because we really lack professionals who can work on conservation projects in Pakistan right now. Then construction site experience. Nowadays architectural education is just confined to the studio walls, and very few institute actually encourage students to go to the site to get hands-on knowledge of construction site. And this is probably a major drawback in the education nowadays, because substantial time on the site should be made mandatory for architecture students because of several reasons. The first thing is that it just brings studio works to reality, and students get an accurate experience of space, and they get an idea of scale as well. Then they get to know what are the processes involved in actual construction of a building, what are the sequence of those processes, and how the buildings are actually constructed, because they just know how to do it on the paper, but not how it is actually done practically. Then they can get hands-on knowledge for different crafts. For example, like woodcraft, joinery, metalwork, tiling, etc. We really don't have students getting involved in these at the moment. So I think this needs to come back into the architectural pedagogy. Students will also get a better understanding of the material application and how construction materials are actually used on the site. And one thing that most of the students really don't know is how different services are incorporated into the building. So like mechanical, electrical services, and what are the space requirements for them. And when they actually go into the actual field and offices, this is certainly a drawback, and that they have to face, and they have to learn from the start how these things are done on the site. Then computer-aided courses and visual presentation. Now, architecture profession and education both are based on visual presentation of design. And recently, everybody knows how the visual technology has developed, and these advances have put new demands on the construction industry. Architectural practices have actually adapted to this changing context of technology. And architectural pedagogy needs to do the same, because nowadays in offices, BIM modeling, Revit, InDesign, Rhino, and so many other softwares are used on day-to-day basis. And we need to prepare our students for that as well. And we need to encourage them and probably incorporate some of these softwares into our architectural pedagogy. Then creating a sense of social awareness and think of giving back to the community, like our housing minister said as well, and that we need to design for the people. So this is something that architectural institute should do as well. They need to instill the spirit of social responsibility, so that the students can tackle the challenges that the society faces today, whether they are the issues of climate change, natural disasters, pandemic, or there are problems relating to squatter settlements. For example, in the words of Zahiruddin Khwaja, a great deal can be achieved if teams of architects and students could work with missionary spirit to assess the dwellers of these areas so they can improve their living conditions on a self-help basis without regard to any question of profit for the architect. And I would say that Yasmin Lawry is a living example of that. She has co-founded the Heritage Foundation of Pakistan to undertake research and also safeguard Pakistan Cultural Heritage. She has devised programs called Barefoot Social Architecture for the impoverished communities in Sindh province. And they are running training programs for the rural villagers so they can learn to make building components and products that they can then sell to each other or they can use in building their own houses. So after the earthquake of 2005 in Pakistan, she devised various programs which were based on zero carbon footprint structures and sustainable building techniques. And they resulted in 40,000 green shelters, which were built using bamboo, lime, and mud. And local residents and students were made part of it as well. And this is the sense of social awareness and responsibility that we need to create in our students nowadays, so they can give back to the community without any, like benefit for themselves. So this needs to be actually developed, not just in architecture, but in other fields as well in Pakistan nowadays. So to summarize and to conclude the discussion, I think the major points are that in the architectural pedagogy nowadays, we need to develop a suitable admission criteria which takes into account students' aptitude for architecture. And for that, we need to have some kind of career training as well. For young students, so like primary at secondary level, we need to tell them what are different, like fields, not rather than just getting into engineering university and getting wherever the merit tells you. So you need to have some, take into account the aptitude of the students as well. Then we have to develop and check the standard of education because of the new emerging institutes. We have to keep a check on what is the standard of education they are offering to the students. Then we have to a teaching approach which is based on critical regionalism. So that has to be introduced in the studios, so students get to know how climate, context, and culture affects the design of a building, and how it can help them create designs which are sympathetic to the built environment around them. We also need to prioritize training of young students in sustainability, passive how, net zero carbon techniques, so they can come up with innovative design solution to counter the effects of climate change. We also need to encourage them to take part in conservation project as volunteers at different levels, so they can learn about their heritage as well as local crafts. The construction site experience certainly should be made mandatory for graduation from architectural schools. The updated training of computer-aided visual presentation techniques should be incorporated in our academic studies as well. And lastly, but not the least, a sense of social responsibility needs to be instilled in students so they can give back to the community as young professionals without any consideration for financial benefits for themselves. So thank you so much for that. And I hope I have not taken up too much time. I will just stop sharing now.
Thank you so much, Amna. It was really interesting to see how the youngsters are showing a lot of passion abroad to be architects. I personally feel it is also because of the exposure and the freedom they get to select their majors, as Dr. Samia shared her experience of how she came for her education here. Culture, context, and climate, the three principal C's as shared by you, and I'm sure that it is the right way to see how the standardized buildings are not showing much respect to local practices, the materials, and the social values. And we must push our students to actually understand the fundamentals. And also at the same time, we have to focus on how our institutes are working on the social responsibilities and making sure that all architects they are teaching know how to give back to the community. Thank you so much, Amna. It was a very well conclusive presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Asya Sadiq. She is an architect, an urbanist, and an educationalist. She did her master's in human settlement from PGCHS, KU Leuven, Belgium, and is currently a PhD scholar and a grade professor, guest professor at her Faculty of Architecture. She is one of the founding members of the Department of Architecture and Planning, NED, University, Karachi. Please welcome Asya Sadiq.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum to all. Thank you for the invite. बहुत बहुत आपका शुक्रिया. And I really like the idea कि हम उर्दू अंग्रेजी जैसे कि हम अमूमन करते हैं उसी तरह मिला के बोलें. अगर आप चाहें तो मैं सिर्फ अंग्रेजी या सिर्फ उर्दू में भी बात कर सकती हूँ, मगर मज़ा उसी में आता है जब उर्दू अंग्रेजी हाइब्रिड हो जाती है.
आपको जैसे अच्छा लगे, हम आपके साथ बिल्कुल एग्री
There are
करते हैं.
some people in the audience, कोई foreigners अगर आपके पास हैं तो मैं अंग्रेजी में कर लेती हूँ.
We majorly have all local people here, and I feel everyone here can understand Urdu perfectly. So
Perfect.
आपको जो भी medium perfect लगे. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I will share my presentation. तारुफ तो आपने मेरा करवा ही दिया है. Okay, sorry. I think I did the wrong thing. I should first go into your share screen. Ji. So today what I will be presenting to you all is kind of my take, or rather my learnings, let's say, from my architectural academic practice or pedagogic practice of the last 2 decades. जैसे कि सना आपको बता रही थी, मैंने कराची से पढ़ा, कराची में NED यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ाया बहुत से साल. And for the moment, I'm based in Belgium. I'm pursuing, well, kind of almost finished with my PhD. But in the meanwhile, I've also been teaching over here. पढ़ाने के साथ साथ जो मेरा एक बहुत important वक्त गुजरा है in Karachi in my professional life has been with Arif Hassan, who's a leading voice, I would say, on urban issues. And उनके साथ रह के हमने बहुत ज़्यादा research भी की शहर के ऊपर, and then I tried to incorporate that into my teaching. And that kind of over the years has developed into an interest of taking what we have learned from the informal sector, which is very, very dominant in Karachi, but I think पूरे पाकिस्तान में ही उसकी presence और dominance हमें नज़र आती है, into a kind of interface, because I feel कि जब हमारे जैसे माशरों में हम रह रहे होते हैं, और in our societies where more than half of the population is being catered to by the informal sector, तो कोई भी डिजाइनर, कोई भी सिटीजन उसको इग्नोर नहीं कर सकता, ना ही करना चाहिए. So that is kind of my take on architectural pedagogy जो मैं आज आपके साथ share करूँगी, and I would really like your feedback on that. So just to situate the argument and to kind of situate the presentation, a small framework, which is, I was very happy with the topic, because usually we tend to talk about architectural education, which for me is about getting into the details of the curriculum, skills, state of the art, and so on. And then architectural pedagogy, which is our topic of the day, which kind of works within a larger contextual framework, जिसमें values, ethics and knowledge generation, जो कि मेरे से पहले वाले speakers ने भी जिस चीज़ के ऊपर touch upon किया है, वो एक important चीज़ होती है. And in my teaching experience, both in Pakistan and in Europe, I feel that there are many contexts or architectural institutes, not only in Pakistan, which tend to stay focused on the curriculums, the skills, and the state of the art, and often do not make the students aware of their surroundings. What are the histories, ecologies, politics, culture, diversity? And then hamare case mein, for example, what is it that we call formal, informal, legal, illegal, de facto, private, public, and so on. So in my practice of kind of education projects and research, the architectural pedagogy has drawn on all of these aspects over the years, as I will show to you through some projects that we did. The other thing that I would like to situate is like, why is it that we have the current situation of architectural pedagogy and practice in hyper transforming contexts like Karachi or any other place in the world. I mean, I'm facing similar kind of conditions here in Brussels while teaching and conducting my own research. So amuman, architectural research, education, and architectural practice tend to follow parallel tracks, which kind of interface or tend to come together on special moments of if a practicing architect comes in to teach, or the juries, or some kind of consultations, and so on. But majority of the times, these three tracks, which are very, very important in the development of the profession as a whole, वो बहुत ज़्यादा आपस में dialogue नहीं कर रहे होते. और जो spatial production हमारे यहाँ होती है अमूमी तौर पे, वो या तो developers call out करते हैं या international funding agencies उसको call out करती हैं, political agendas, formal authorities who are very, very obsessed with making world-class cities, which are, you know, following the kind of Dubai or the Singaporean or some model or the other. So that for me translates to the fact that that our cities, citizens, and spaces also stay on parallel tracks. And एक शहर वो होता है जो formally develop हो रहा होता है, और एक शहर वो होता है जो informally या grassroots से ऊपर develop हो रहा होता है, और हम सब उन्हें देखते हैं, but हम उनकी meaning to say हम informal developments को देखते हैं, but हम उनको बहुत ज़्यादा recognize नहीं करते in our plans or in our projects, and that remains a problem of, you know, a kind of political problem, because जब आप किसी चीज़ को देखते हैं तो ठीक है, मगर the moment आप उसको कोई नाम देते हैं या आप उसकी कोई mapping करते हैं, आप उसको record करते हैं, तो वो legal होने लगता है, and there a whole new discussion of, you know, rights and responsibilities and resources, etc. comes up. So, so there's a formal spatial production, there's informal spatial production, but what I'm advocating for throughout my practice, and I am now kind of putting in front of you, is an interface of the two, to see how we can try to bring the two domains of the formal and the informal through an interface, and that interface through architectural pedagogy and education. कुछ उसमें हमने experiences and हमारे projects हैं with, you know, due failures and successes, but nonetheless it is a possibility. So this is the proposed alternative framework for an inclusive, engaged, and sustainable pedagogic practice. And I call it a pedagogic practice because I feel that the people who are teaching should really look at it as a practice, because आप उसके through theory, practice, and projects हर चीज को influence करते हैं by developing young professionals. So, you know, it should not have this detached attitude कि हम institution के अंदर बैठ के, university के अंदर बैठ के हम practice नहीं कर रहे. No, that's not true. हम practice कर रहे हैं. We're very much feeding into the practice, and we also a lot of times respond back to the practice, and there has to be like kind of a framework to whatever is happening. My framework has always been the city, the citizens, and the spaces, which are an outcome of my work and the educational work that I've been involved with. चूंकि कराची एक बहुत ही हाइपर ट्रांसफॉर्मिंग सा कॉन्टेक्स्ट है, ना ब्रसल्स में आके अंदाजा हुआ कि यहाँ पे भी कुछ पॉकेट्स हैं which are very similar in nature, because we often tend to put all the chaos and all the problems which are happening in the world into the ambits of the global south, but in fact it's not true. There is a growing you know, let's say informal sector in the north, and there is a very, very rich and formalized sector in all the global south. क्यों होते हैं, or understanding the needs of the hyper transforming urban context, it's very important for any professional who's operating in these contexts, and in our case, of course, architects. क्योंकि आप built environment के साथ जब deal कर रहे होते हैं, तो उसमें आपको जो larger दुनिया जिसमें हम रहते हैं, the neoliberal ग्लोबलाइज्ड वर्ल्ड और उसके जो इन्फ्लुएंसेस हैं उनको समझना, ताकि आप इस तरह के शॉपिंग मॉल्स कम से कम बनाने की कोशिश करें, but then also upgrading the bazaar-like environments. I mean, I'm just taking a random example. The same applies to housing, the same applies to transport, same applies to low-income housing and so on. क्यों होते हैं ये हाइपर ट्रांसफॉर्मिंग कॉन्टेक्स्ट हमारे यहाँ या कहीं पे भी? It's because of the huge numbers of populations which migrate from rural to urban areas, but also from the regional perspective. Karachi की growth में हमने देखा है कि बहुत internal growth was much less than these various waves of refugee migrations that we saw. Similarly, जो चीज़ समझने की ज़रूरत होती है वो ये कि हाइपर ट्रांसफॉर्मिंग कॉन्टेक्स्ट या बड़े शहरों, चाहे वो बड़ा शहर हो या छोटा शहर for that matter, whichever is attracting a population growth, you have to understand its formal informal dynamics because they're always interdependent. Diversity एक और aspect है जो हमने कराची में बहुत देखा, चूंकि उसको ignore किया गया because Karachi is a very very politically, economically and socially diverse place. उसके बहुत ही adverse impacts आए जब वो proper representation नहीं थी. And how to make sure that common agendas of sustainability, climate change, pandemics get taken into account within the role of the architectural pedagogy and architect. इसमें जो important चीजें हैं जो कि कुछ मैं references and literature में भी देखती रही हूँ. The first thing is the recognizing. So recognition is very important. Recognition by the academic circles, the institutions, the policymakers, and the responsible agencies. The recording of it and the mapping of it, because that's where the kind of glitch happens or the break happens. Because जब आप किसी चीज को रिकॉर्ड करके उसको फॉर्मलाइज करने की कोशिश करते हैं तो आप पूरे स्टेटस को या जो एक बना हुआ माहौल होता है उसको आप चैलेंज करते हैं. And then of course a redistribution of resources, human resources, financial and so on towards a new spatial agenda. इसको यहाँ पे मैं आपको what I call the FIF, it's a kind of platform I'm trying to set up through my kind of result of the PhD, is what I call the formal informal interface. And that platform के लिए ये साइट मैंने बनाई थी just to show कि ये तस्वीरें मैं आपको एक नज़र में दिखाऊं तो इसमें सारी तस्वीरें mixed हैं कराची और ब्रसल्स के एक लो इनकम एरिया की या एक रेफ्यूजी इमिग्रेंट डोमिनेटेड part of Brussels. And it's very difficult to distinguish what is what. In the sense कि वैसे ही shopping malls आपको दोनों जगहों पे नजर आते हैं, उसी तरह के sort of underdeveloped playing spaces या open spaces. Similarly, you see, very generic kind of architecture being developed in both the places. So this for me, apart from using data and numbers, is a very, very strong visual way to make the point that informality and this kind of interface of the formal informal is everywhere, especially in my practice in both the contexts जहाँ पे मैं काम कर रही हूँ. अभी भी मेरा कराची के बहुत से projects और चीज़ों में राब्ता रहता है. So I know very much what the situation is. And इसको आप informality of need and probably informality of desire, कुछ इस किस्म की चीज़ें आपको literature में मिलती हैं, but nonetheless all of it falls in the same discussion. Reasons क्या हैं? I will not go too much into the details of it. बहुत सी इसके बारे में बात हो चुकी है. But सबसे important जो चीज़ है, that's a lack of counter narratives. So we have the formal narrative, we have the housing plans, we have this much, घर बनाने हैं 5 साल में, that kind of political agendas all over the world. But what we don't have is a counter narrative to say कि जो मौजूद है, जो ऑलरेडी इनफॉर्मली बन चुका है, जो आपके शहर को डिफाइन कर रहा है, चाहे वो हाउसिंग की शक्ल में हो, पब्लिक स्पेसेस की शक्ल में हो, प्रोडक्टिव स्पेसेस की शक्ल में हो, उसको आप कैसे इनकॉर्पोरेट कर सकते हैं, बिकॉज दैट्स अ विन-विन सिचुएशन. यू कैन एक्चुअली build up on what people have already done rather than getting into evictions and like getting into a completely new set of architecture. So, and a lack, I feel uska bahut zyada ताल्लुक hai to a lack of appropriate design education, like my other colleagues have said, because the focus is on education, on kind of borrowed concepts, on histories which are not really ours. So जब हमारा architect graduate करता है तो उसको अपने context और अपनी history और ecologies के बारे में बहुत कम और दुनिया के बारे में उससे बहुत ज़्यादा मालूम होता है. So we kind of need to reverse this kind of knowledge building. Recognition इसकी क्यों ज़रूरी है? इसलिए कि scene जब आप informality के देखते हैं तो obviously it falls into the ambits of the illegal, the chaotic and so on. But जब आप उसकी unseen side को research करते हैं तो you see the spontaneity, you see the innovation and you see the self-sufficiency that these settlements or these sectors have. So there's some conclusions to that. I will again not go into the details of that, but basically to say that there is a value to what we have as de facto in our cities, और हमें उनको उस interface को strengthen करने की ज़रूरत है for both sides, I would say, of the society to benefit from it. और उसमें architect का और space, what I like to call spatial designers, क्योंकि ज़रूरी नहीं कि वो architectural production में ही शामिल हों. They can be working on the policy or they can be working at the city level. Now the aspirations क्या होनी चाहिए? Aspiration of course एक alternative mindset पे काम करने की होनी चाहिए या होनी थी मेरी when I started 20-25 years ago on my own architectural and pedagogic practice. Recognition होनी अब तमाम जो भी आपके hyper transforming किसी भी context में बहुत तेजी से तब्दीलियां आती हैं, उन तब्दीलियों पे नजर रखना और उन तब्दीलियों को समझना और respond करना, आर्किटेक्ट के हाइब्रिड रोल के लिए तैयार रहना. जरूरी नहीं है कि आर्किटेक्ट हमेशा स्टार आर्किटेक्ट ही बनेगा और एक दफ्तर खोल के वो दफ्तर ही चलाएगा. हो सकता है कि वो आर्किटेक्ट फैसिलिटेटर हो, किसी और किस्म की एडवाइजरी कैपेसिटी में काम करे, एडवोकेसी, एक्टिविस्ट. सो वी आल्सो नीड टू काइंड ऑफ ओपन अप द बाउंड्रीज ऑफ द प्रोफेशन. And there should be an emphasis on extending this knowledge. जैसे कि आज हम सब आपके साथ कर रहे हैं, कल को I'm kind of talking to the students. Hopefully you will have new ideas and you will share them further. So now I will talk to you about a few of the cases where my learnings come from or which I kind of continue to work on in my practice. And I've been looking through projects on integrating informality into the formal way of designing and approaching cities, expanding it, consolidating, cross-fertilizing, and hybridizing. अब मैं आपके सामने 3 cases दिखाऊंगी जिसमें hopefully those things will come across. This is a small introduction to Karachi. सिर्फ चंद बुनियादी data statistics to say, kind of situate the importance of this city and why it has attracted all this big population. But now I think it's also true for Lahore and many other cities in Pakistan. जो important चीज़ है वो super diversity और इसकी strength to kind of work with towards the future of the city. Hyper transformations is maps से आपके सामने बहुत clearly जो लाल रंग में आपको maps नजर आ रहे हैं, like to see कि 500,000 का एक शहर over a period of 70 years has gone on to become a city of 22 million. So ये जो इतनी तेज रफ्तार development है उसमें हमें अपना role as architects and architectural pedagogists सिचुएट करने की ज़रूरत है, बिकॉज इतनी तेज़ रफ्तार तब्दीली में तकरीबन रोज़ाना ही चीज़ें बदल रही होती हैं. सो हाउ डज वन रिस्पॉन्ड टू दैट? पहला केस जो मैं आपके सामने पेश कर रही हूँ ये एक नाला है, जैसे कि हमारे सब शहरों में नाले होते हैं. पेरेनियल नाला था, rain water storm drain, which over the time has become because of the situation of the low income abadis next to it, it has turned into a sewage drain. So it's considered like backwaters and जहाँ ज़्यादातर कचरा, गरीब लोग, दुनिया की हर बुराई मौजूद होती है in the formal mindset. But we ended up doing a project on this nala, and what is called the Liari Nadi, and there's another one falling into it, the Orangi Nala, through a curriculum development project on urban design that we ran with NED, Moratoba University in Sri Lanka, with TUE in Eindhoven, KU Leuven in Belgium, and CEPT in India. So ये 5 schools आता है और हमने कुछ वैसी चीजें discover करने की कोशिश की जिन पे आमतौर पे काम नहीं होता या उनको backwaters की तरह धकेल दिया जाता है. So we started studying the Orangi Nala and the Liari Nadi. And the common view, which was that these are overpopulated, it's full of disorder and chaos, these are, like backwaters with nothing to offer. But our research kind of showed us that they were very, very resilient populations, there was super diversity, and it was actually a very, very productive landscape. So this is one of the pictures of the Liari Nadi. And there were many ये धोबी घाट वहाँ के बहुत मशहूर हैं और पूरे शहर के कपड़े वहीं धुलते हैं. मगर over time and there were many other like bakra mandis and solid waste sorting yards etc. So बहुत ज़्यादा बड़े पैमाने पे वहाँ पे informal productive activities भी हो रही थी जिन सबको evict करके तोड़ फोड़ के there was a mega project of the Liari Expressway which was initiated, and there was a disregard for what was on site because it was falling into the ambits of the illegal and the informal. ये project आज तक पूरी तरह मुकम्मल नहीं हुआ है, इसका एक track मुकम्मल है, दूसरा नहीं, and it created and costed lots like thousands of lives and houses and other building stock in the city. There was a big resistance to this project from the civil society and NED University Department of Architecture से भी हम चंद लोग उसमें शामिल थे by mapping the situation, because what is very important, अगर आपको याद हो recognition के बाद तो दूसरा point था वो was about recording the situation, and this recording and mapping really helped that whole counter narrative to be developed. And, this kind of documentation about social histories, the ecology of that space, the possibilities of productive landscapes, etc., created a lot of awareness. And there was a lot of, changes which also happened to the design of that mega project, which otherwise would have completely devastated the overall sociology and ecology of the place. ये कुछ alternative design ideas थे जो हमने develop किए, जो कि वहाँ की जो one of the local municipalities site town, उनके साथ मिलके हमने on site इनके कुछ pilot project भी run किए, and with people's participation and so on. इसके बाद जो दूसरा project है that's about consolidating informality. So जो area जो मैं आपको दिखा रही हूँ, this is the Sadr Bazaar of Karachi, which is very, very central, geographically located. But जो उसकी सबसे ज़्यादा important बात है वो वहाँ का kind of tangible, intangible heritage. And with over a passage of time, with a lack of public transport in the city, it's also operating as like an informal transport hub for the city, but with like thousands of buses passing through. जिसके नतीजे में वहाँ पे thousands of hawkers भी मौजूद हैं, जिनके बारे में usual ख्याल ये होता है कि they are illegal, they should be evicted, they are source of disorder, and there's often gentrification projects which basically work towards evicting all these hawkers and the Transport Act related other activities, resulting in a lot of economic and social devastation, not only for the poor and the hawkers, but actually शहर में रहने वाला हर वो शख्स जो सदर बाजार one way or the other इस्तेमाल करता है, उन सब के ही लिए वो दिक्कत का बायस होता है. What we saw in our research is that this is productive pavement economy. This is जैसे सामिया भी कह रही थी कि एक aesthetic elite aesthetic होता है और एक populist culture aesthetic होता है. And this is a very, very popular area with the masses of the city. जब आप उसको devastate करते हैं तो आप शहर के बहुत सारे लोगों को devastate करते हैं. This is a view on Empress Market, which is like the kind of center of Sadar Bazaar. Just to give you an idea of the ambience, I mean, हम सभी इस तरह के images से familiar हैं जो कोई भी पाकिस्तान में किसी भी शहर में रहता है. When you get into the details of it, you see the businesses, the ongoings, the very, very specific cultural milieu जो कि किसी भी अंदरून शहर किसी भी शहर में ही आपको मिल सकता है, वो आपको सबर्बिया में कभी नहीं मिलता मेरे हिसाब से या मेरा ख्याल है किसी के भी हिसाब से. That's where we start to lose touch with our local histories, culture, and get into these kind of generic suburban idea of living and architecture. And that's what eventually develops the aesthetics of the people who live there. So once again, recording, mapping, understanding. And by the way, before I forget, this was all work done with the students, with colleagues, with several stakeholders. So with the stakeholders on site, like जो organizations हैं, hawkers की या और किस्म की, उन सब के साथ मिलके हमने ये documentation की. And it was not only physical documentation, but also interviews, local histories, and so on. I think I have 10 minutes, so I will quickly run you through the rest of the presentation. ये हमने फिर एक proposal किया, उस पर publication भी हुई, and you know there was over time there have been other things which also became a spin-off to this. The third case is from my current place of practice, which is Brussels, and this Plus Leeds is a place जो कि मेरा PhD का case study भी है, और उसमें what I'm calling cross-fertilizing informality and hybridizing informality, because वही वाला once again formula of city citizen spaces, having students involved, having the academic institution involved, because there was a lot of informality around the School of Architecture, Leuven, जहाँ पे मैं PhD कर रही हूँ और आजकल पढ़ाती भी हूँ. But nobody was really, even in the Department of Architecture, was paying attention to it. It was just like a part of the reality. But I started working on that, I guess, because it was too close to home. It was too close to what I knew cities were made of. So once I started working with it on it, some students also got interested, and now there's other people working on, you know, their researches and PhDs and so on it. Basically काम जो है, it's all kind of working towards bringing to fore the potentials of informal urbanism in very, very developed contexts like Belgium and Brussels. जो methods or tools मैंने throughout इस्तेमाल किए हैं, this kind of pedagogic practice, in which I'm sure others have done too, वो हमेशा students जो भी theoretical या studio projects में पढ़ाती हूँ, उसमें I always try to situate it in the larger pedagogic context, चाहे वो कराची का context हो या Brussels का context हो, because it is very important for me as a tutor, but also I feel for the student to go out and actually touch and feel जिस चीज़ के बारे में हम theoretically बात कर रहे हैं, and also, you know, to go and meet those people that we are talking about and that we are trying to design for. So I always had a very strong feeling that design just can't be in a site, and then design can't just be a hypothetical kind of a design. It has to be embedded. It has to come from the context, and then you give the students and you give the young professionals the possibility to make up their own mind and go and see it for themselves and to research. So आपका role उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा top down नहीं रहता है, आप facilitator हो जाते हैं, you become one, you know, part of that larger team. And I've always, I must say, had very good results with this kind of an approach. The other thing which we've always tried to do is public consultative workshops. ये तस्वीरें Brussels के workshop की हैं, but we've run Similar things in Karachi as well, at the Department of Architecture at NED, with my colleagues, students, other stakeholders, civil society, and it created that link. And it, I think, also leads to a sensitization of the formal actors, let's say, of making of the city. And it engages and it provides those platforms and places ke jahan log अपने एतराज़ात भी पेश कर सकते हैं, अपने ideas भी पेश कर सकते हैं, and they also find some commonalities and they can take those agendas forward. Yeah, these are some pictures of the workshops. कुछ हमने इसमें videos बनाए using digital medium, जैसे आमना भी कह रही थी, बहुत important हो गया है, so that really helped to, you know, bring the word out there. And it's still an ongoing dialogue. हम कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि जो भी research हुई है Brussels में इस पे कुछ काम. In fact, there is a pilot project going on at the moment. So one of the things is a change in mindset and looking at the urban space, or any space for that matter, beyond its immediate land use and mobility and accommodation of real kind of actors on site. So this strengthens, you know, new kind of relations and new interfaces. इसके जो कुछ results मेरे सामने आए हैं over 20-25 years is, you know, like within the frame that मैंने आपसे शुरू में भी discuss किया था, is that it has created often and a lot of times creative processes जिसमें young professionals, students can really dabble and experiment with this idea of alternative practices and working in kind of maybe not very conventional responses towards architectural design or architectural projects. It has definitely given opportunity for triggering new ideas. Some of them have failed, some of them have developed. It has also led to the building up of many professionals and teachers who are now working at the Department of Architecture at NED University. Because वो project एक possibility पेश करता है, कुछ funding आपके पास होती है, आप लोगों को hire कर सकते हैं, आप लोगों के साथ काम कर सकते हैं, and a lot of times those people then just kind of continue with you. It has, you know, kind of led to the promotion of this multifaceted kind of way of looking towards architectural pedagogy, spatial pedagogy and practice. And sometimes, not always, it has helped us bridging the gap, because when we are working on the context, sometimes on real projects, it brings us in contact with like I said earlier, the formal actors, and leads to co-designing, co-production, and co-creation. Another important thing is that studio teaching has been very central to this whole idea, because it provides that space and time जो required होता है इस किस्म की activities को organize करने के लिए, उनको push करने के लिए, उसमें काम करने के लिए. So that's definitely something to note for the people who would, you know, like to use that for similar sort of practices. जो एक important चीज़ है वो ये कि अगर आपके सामने एक formal, informal, private, public kind of context मौजूद हो, उसमें जो establishment of the role of the architectural education institution, practices, practitioners and policy which are involved in spatial production, wo I think it kind of has come to fore, and students and also young professionals, but also colleagues are now questioning that, how to situate ourselves within this larger kind of context that one is working with, especially in hyper-transforming contexts. ये वही spin-offs of results हैं जो मैं आपसे पहले भी बात कर चुकी हूँ. You know, we've had exhibitions, we have presented this to public fora, we've been here in Brussels as well. That is very important कि जो भी कुछ आपके स्टूडियो में हो रहा है या आपकी प्रैक्टिस में हो रहा है, to bring it out, to kind of put it out for public introspection, speculation, criticism, because उससे आपकी भी practice develop होती है, and दूसरों के साथ भी knowledge share होती है. So that was a very, very conscious effort, and you know, we've always tried to do that. Some lessons learned, especially for the younger generation of architects who are listening to us, or you know, for that matter, anybody who would be interested in it. वो सबसे important बात ये कि आपको recognize करने की ज़रूरत है उस दुनिया को जिसमें आप रहते हैं, और उसमें, you know, you should have a desire to interface with that. Then also often living with the fact that you will not always be working like a star architect, but आपको बहुत सी दफ़ा अपना role adapt करना पड़ेगा and अपनी ego को उसके लिए तैयार रखना पड़ेगा. And you know, that is not a very difficult thing to do if one kind of understands that design and spatial production can be arrived at from different aspects. Then the other important thing is negotiation and balancing of actions and reactions, and the time investment. So aap akele ye kuch nahi hota. This is a time effort. This is not, you know, you're not running. It's like actually running an office, but at a kind of outside the office. So you're not constrained to just working with your immediate team, but you have to actually invest time and work with a much larger group of people. And this, I think, time-wise can often become a constraint. So इन तमाम चीज़ों के लिए आपको तैयार रहने की ज़रूरत होती है. जो challenges होते हैं वो sort of are connected to the lessons that we have learned. But you know, once you kind of go into it and you make it your practice, then I guess it's okay. It's kind of part of the way you approach your role towards spatial production and your professional kind of placement in the society. So that was it. I think I finished almost in time, if I'm not mistaken. I'll stop sharing. So.
Thank you so much. I think we all learned that we have to open up the boundaries of architecture and must recognize what's happening around us. As an architect, we should also adapt and have a hybrid approach to new things. You talked and mentioned about hyper transformation, and since we are in Lahore and we feel the same thing is happening around in our city, the major reason is possibly, and I think, is that a lot of people are migrating from smaller towns and city to Lahore, because Lahore is currently the only developed city in the province. So maybe we have to work on that too, that how we develop our cities, not only one, but all the towns too, so that we can discourage this migration to some extent. But at the same time, I also think that we have to add architects into the policy making so that they can cater the issues at the macro levels, also at the micro levels. It was really interesting to see the comparison you showed us for Karachi and Brussels. And we wish you good luck for your research and would look forward to seeing more of your publications. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So our next speaker is a Fulbright scholar. She graduated from Harvard University, USA as a landscape architect in 2012. She focuses more on sustainable master planning, strengthening public realm, and reducing carbon footprints. She is currently serving as an assistant professor at MIT University, Dubai, where she is pursuing research on the role of landscape architecture in urban development. Amna Shahid will take us through architectural study and practice through interdisciplinary education. Thank you, Amna, for joining us. I will share my screen for your presentation, and I hope it will work this time. So do let me know if it's working. Hold on, let me just do it. Amna,
yes, it's visible. Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so my talk was basically focused more towards the educational side of architectural study, and particularly with respect to bachelor's in itself. Can you please go to the next slide? So I'm basically going to talk about architectural study and practice through interdisciplinary education. And the next slide, can you go to? So the first thing which comes in mind when usually any student takes admission in architecture is all about form, all about geometry, all about design. I'm going to be talking mainly about basics because we in academia really believe that the foundation and the basics, if they are thought of in a right direction, it really refines the overall direction of the students. One thing which many times students are surprised themselves to hear when they are told is that as an architect, you are going to be a generalist, you're not going to be a specialist. And then their reaction to that is mostly in terms of a surprise, because they're not really expecting, they're expecting that the term architect, which is at times considered a little bit equivalent to an engineer as well, is going to be something in which they will have to deal with precise calculations, mathematics, and something in which they will have to come up with an idea which is more of similar to 0.056 those types of calculations, but then again, when they start the process of design, and in fact when they hear the word process itself as well, that itself is another surprise for them, because their interpretation of architecture is more of the classic jab at architecture, in which it's very much coming up with one full idea and a eureka moment and saying that, yes, this is my idea. That notation of architecture has really evolved and changed in the past years, in the past decades for sure. And in that manner, I feel that the way architecture is taught to the students, in fact, itself has taken a new directive. It's taken a new turn, because it's more of a conversation you are having with the student rather than a final say to something. Sorry for that. Overall, when we say architects are generalists, that mainly aims at more of a higher order of thinking, more so a situation in which we are, you can say, fine-tuning the brains of students in such a way that they are able to absorb the maximum amount of information from different disciplines. And the purpose of that is not to have one finite solution to something, but more of something or a situation in which they are simply just picking different points from related fields. For example, if they're designing something pertaining to artificial intelligence, something related to medicine, something related to the groundwater of an area. So they should have the capacity to absorb just the relevant information and then be able to apply it to that project itself. So that's what really makes architects generalists. And that is also something which allows this profession to sustain for a longer period of time, because I think very popularly, many of you might have also read that many professions are going to become obsolete in the upcoming years, and they will not be relevant at all anymore. And architecture, as a matter of fact, interestingly, is considered to be one of those professions which will still stay very much relevant to globally in the upcoming years. And one main reason is the link of this with you can say other professions, and especially when the interdisciplinary factor comes, especially AI in particular. It has the capacity to absorb that type of information. So this presentation is mostly going to be drawing parallels between architects being generalists, the current methodology of communication and design in architecture practice, and then how that can be used and absorbed in the architectural studies and system itself as well. So can we go to the next slide? Yes. So some of the pros and cons, which I've already explained previously in the previous slide as well, being a generalist or a specialist is going to have its benefits. It's going to have its negatives at the same time as well. One of the key things which happens when you are designing or thinking as a specialist in particular is that you try to morph every idea into such a cumulative, you can say, space that your designs start turning into that very cookie cutter style. Another popular term for it is also known as duck architecture, and in which you are like literally deriving geometry or form based ideas. Now a question, a very interesting question, I'm just recalling, one of my colleagues once suggested when we were talking about all these things such as process and strategy, and it doesn't have to be geometry driven and why, but then the answer or the answer to that at the end is also that there has to be some basis, or there will be some mark on the face of the earth based on your overall idea. It cannot be an idea completely in air unless it's something like seed bombing, which is a landscape idea and a fabulous landscape strategy which is applied. And the word strategy, when I say that, brings me exactly to that thought process, which is conceived by generalists, because an architect as a generalist, if they only stick to thinking about form and geometry and all of that, will never really blend with the surrounding context. And as the previous presenter, Asya, she said very rightly so, that you have to start looking at the site in a very holistic manner. You have to start looking at not just what is lying within the site, but what is connected to the site as well. What is above or below the site, what is the groundwater level, what is the quality of sunshine, wind, all these allied factors. And then these factors are going to seep in that region, starting from the site-based scale to the regional scale. And then maybe in certain cases, a small intervention might have a provincial or a national scale application as well. So the seed of an idea can be much, much more than just the geometry or just the outlines which we are setting for it. The next slide. I think the screen went away. The presentation is not visible anymore.
Amna, can you share your screen? Your own presentation?
Okay, sir, it's visible now. Yes, sir.
Amna, can you see the screen now?
Yes, it's visible. Okay, so going to the next slide. Yes, so as I mentioned before, this overall process of thinking as a specialist otherwise starts leading towards more of a cookie cutter pattern, and something which we see very notably in the suburbs in USA, etc. But then again, those are regions which are popularizing more of the concept of merchandise and purchase, and the focus is more on the economical aspect of it, rather than, you can say, the overall urban aspect, etc. So can we go to the next slide? So as I've been emphasizing before as well, the importance of interdisciplinary education. The student may not have to memorize all the information. This is one of the usual myths when a student is told that, okay, if your project is derived from or thought from a certain concept or idea, and then they just try to stick to that basic purpose or thought pattern itself. When it comes to interdisciplinary education, I will give an example of using softwares as well. The common way of when initially softwares were introduced, I feel that I myself am from the hybrid generation. So we were trained in manual drawing and drafting. And at the same time, somewhere in the middle of our education, we shifted towards softwares as well. But then again, our understanding was mostly that we have to, ace that software, and that will be the ultimate, computer software which will stick and stand by us throughout the rest of our life. But then again, this perception to a great extent got changed when I went to Harvard, because over there it was more of like a software is just a means of getting a task done, which was true previously as well. But then the learning pattern, and especially since we're talking about architectural pedagogy, the learning pattern for that, which I noted from the faculty, was that software should just be considered as something which you can even learn in a week or so. So it should be more like a tool which you keep updating yourself with, rather than a finite skill which you have gained and which is going to stay with you for forever, probably. So process, strategy, and then softwares, these three words up till now I've covered. Can we go to the next slide? Can we go to the next slide?
I think Amna, the best thing would be अगर आप खुद share करो, then you are.
The problem is right now, I'm in a logistical fix. We have something else going on. We have exam duties going on. So I cannot be using that system right now. So I had this communication before with the organizers that if someone can share my screen, yeah.
Maybe I can share if you send me your presentation.
Yeah, sure.
You can just put it here in the chat, or maybe group, and I will share it from there.
Okay.
Send me.
Yeah, Dr. साहब को भेज दें, whatever.
Okay. So I've sent it to you. It should just reach now.
Okay, let me see. I haven't received yet.
Just 1 minute. It'll take a minute.
Okay.
Sorry guys, we are having some internet issue at the university. We are trying to resolve.
Okay.
That was the reason I was not able to show on screen.
Okay, that's fine.
I am sharing your presentation with the rest of our speakers in case something happens again, but you may continue.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so going on to the next slide, as I was talking about the topic of process, strategy, and then more related to how you set the foundation for architectural education. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, anyways, I'll just continue at this point onwards verbally. So basically, just as a wrap up of the talk, these days there's a lot of other technology which has also come up. For example, we have this virtual reality technology, and that's completely a new domain in terms of design thinking. In that, two aspects have to be thought of in tandem. One is the presentation method and also the design thinking method itself as well. That really gets affected. At the same time, one very, very pertinent point I want to point out right now is because of COVID-19. And I remember when we received the overall thought behind this webinar, something was mentioned regarding COVID-19 and all of that, and how education system has completely shifted towards presenting and teaching classes online. And this is something which seems to most likely continue in the coming years, irrespective of whenever this pandemic ends. This method of teaching and learning in itself for architecture, I feel to some extent has had a sudden positive effect as well, if we look at the positive stride of it, because just recalling some of the works of popular designers such as Andre Bava and Big and Stoss and all these firms which are collaborating cross continents, they are using these presentation methods, you can say the laptop based presentation method throughout, and that actually provides them a better opportunity to collaborate across other disciplines in the world as well. To the extent that many of my friends and colleagues don't even have an office at all anymore, and they are simply operating from the laptop itself and a full-scale firm. So I think that the working method, the learning method, the presentation method, and the technological interventions have also a good impact in terms of expanding the field of architecture and making it more easier to cross collaborate with other disciplines. So I think I'll just end it on this note, and thank you everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Amna, for being brief with us, but delivering what was very important over here. That with the advent of technology, a lot of professions have taken a hit, but we feel like architecture is something that is going to stay. And that actually reminds me of one of the conversation I had with my colleagues recently, and we were discussing that if somehow robots take over, which would be one field which they won't be able to succeed, and we decided upon it would be art and architecture. Thank you a lot, and we apologize for the glitch we had, and we were not able to.
It's totally fine.
Yeah, but we will share your work in the coming publications, so everyone can take a look there. Lastly, we have with us a very well-known educationalist, a scholar, and someone who has taught at every architecture university in Pakistan. He is a big known name in the architecture sector of Pakistan. He did his postdoc fellowship at our Khan program, MIT USA in 2008. He was awarded Best University Teacher Award for the year 2002 from HEC Pakistan. He is a former Fulbright Scholar for Islamic Architecture at Harvard University and MIT USA. He has published his work all over the world and has worked with many prestigious institutions like Smithsonian Institute, Harvard University, etc. I would like Dr. Abdul Rahman to close the session with his word on architectural pedagogy.
Thank you, Sana. First of all, I would like to thank all of my colleagues who participated in this seminar and presented their thoughts. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Samia Rab, my old colleague who talked about environmental resources, human resources. Then Amna Shahid about culture, about the educational system and the general pedagogy. And Dr. Askia about the city, citizen and space. And lastly, Amna about, you see, the interdisciplinary education processes and strategies. So I am extremely thankful for all of you for sharing your ideas. I will just quickly go through some of the important points which we will discuss with reference to the architectural pedagogy. Basically, the question in front of us is, what is the ultimate goal to achieve in our architectural education? What kind of graduate we want to produce? Then what system we will have to devise for teaching? Whether we should produce graduate who will focus on serve the corporate clients or to work in the industry, producing high-tech architecture who will follow the Western tradition and apply imported building material and their works, which will ultimately create environmental problem and then solve those problems. They will propose to have them fixed with other imported materials. Shall our role to serve the client, or shall we guide and educate the client with the most appropriate solutions? Shall we produce buildings which are more relevant to our own environment using traditional wisdom and using local material and technology? Again, our objective be to produce draftsmen who will work in architectural office, or should we producing thinkers who should challenge the existing situation and suggest alternate theories and solutions? Well, the curriculum of our institutions are almost uniform with little changes, and similar teaching methodology is being followed uh, with little variation. Therefore, the end product of all the institutions are the same. After graduation, the student work in architectural office, serve the wealthy client. Some of them who has to choose to open their own offices. The innovation mostly, particularly in terms of the social responsibility, is almost remote. The debates on architecture are non-existent. This is partly because of our existing curriculum and teaching methodology. The debate on architectural issues do not exist. The entire world in this COVID-19 situation has debated a variety of subjects, issues, and provided future directions. We have not seriously discussed at any level. It is an opportunity to find solutions to overcome such solutions. Although there has been some seminars, but they were not sufficient. Looking the number of schools, looking at the kind of problems we have in different areas. So before going further, let me take you back to the golden age of Islam, when Muslim rules the entire world, who made inventions and wrote books on all subjects of human history. Al-Farabi, one of the greatest scholars of the 10th century, made a lot of contribution in human intellectual history, including his famous book, Ara Madinatul Fadila. He was born in Turkestan. He traveled to the Arab world, learned Arabic in Baghdad. He knew Greek, and therefore he commented on the philosophy of the Greek philosophers. And in his publication, he has referred most of the work of the Greek philosophers. So he criticized the approach. So he has been working on this one. So later on, Al-Ghazali criticized the approach of Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina in his book Tahafatul Falasifa, which means incoherence of philosophers. Ghazali believed that Islamic teachings are declining by taking Greek philosophy too much, and that the spiritual science taught by the first generation of Muslims has been forgotten. He stressed that we must look to our own tradition instead of Greek tradition. So this was basically the philosophy of the Al-Ghazali, and he criticized on relying on too much onto the work of the Greek philosophy. And then Ibn Rushd later followed more rational approach. He criticized the approach of Al-Ghazali in his work Tahafatul Tahafut, Incoherence of Incoherence. In his work, he stressed to take benefit from both the works of Greeks and the Islamic tradition, and not stick to any tradition. By this, the Muslim will have to achieve a great excellence in all the fields of human endeavor. From these, we can conclude the following facts: that one should know the knowledge in order to understand the work of other scholars. So first of all, the reading and understanding what is going on around us is extremely important. So reading culture, we will have to develop in our societies, in our schools. In our case, Pakistan, Persian, Arabics are the most important. Our entire body of Mughal period knowledge is in Persian. In such a way, we can only understand the books written in Persian, but cannot benefit from the manuscripts, right? The vocabulary used to describe philosophy of our city culture in the local terms has been described by Abdul Hamid Lahori and Muhammad Saleh Kamboi is amazing and is more closer to nature. I mean, that kind of architecture they have described, that what is the beauty of architecture, which has been described before, is that we can learn these terminologies and concepts because they were very close to nature and they have been practicing to incorporate nature into design. And therefore, they have been discussing about the climate and also that what kind of buildings should we make. So, I mean, this is, at present, we are only looking towards the West. We don't have publication on our own tradition, which has been, suggesting our colleague Asia, that whatever we do, whatever we practice, whatever we learn from the field, we must make publication, so we can get first-hand knowledge about our own tradition and problems. Now, I'm not only the one who is suggesting this, but it was Major Morant, who was honorary associate of the Royal Institute of British Architect in 1880. He suggested that the condition under which architects in India work are extremely different to those in which architects in India work are different to those which architects practice at home. He is talking about the British architects. An architect in England devotes almost the whole of his time to designing his building and drawing to the proper details. The execution of the work is generally, I believe, left to the builder and contractor and those who supplement their labors. Whereas in India, an architect has nearly the whole of the work upon his hand. He has not only to design his building, but also frame its estimate to see its erection carried out. He has very often to make his own bricks, procure his own timber, and act as a contractor under himself. This method has doubts of its own and necessarily enable to architect to obtain more intimate knowledge of and detail of his work. Now, this is, you see, the methodology which has been, you see, practiced, being done by our traditional, and even now, the same kind of strategy, same kind of, you see, practice is. So we will have, my basic objective is that we can learn from both the traditions. We will have to learn, we will have to understand the both of the traditions, what are going on, what is happening, and we will have to adopt our own strategies. The third thing which we learned from the tradition is that traveling is another important aspect. That architect will have to travel, particularly student have to travel, see the works of other, go into the reality, see the context, what is happening, and incorporate into, get some knowledge, feedback from the sites, try to understand the philosophy of the things which are happening there, reasons, and try to solve the problems in the light of those, and take experiences, advantages from all over the world. So in this respect, we will see that contemporary historical works as well get first-hand information about sites and settlements, understand people, tangible and intangible culture, and living tradition of the people, which Dr. Asia was being taught, was discussing it shortly. So, for example, great architects travel different places, learn, drew inspiration from other traditions. Le Corbusier, for example, he went to visited North Africa and you see observed so many things. And similarly, the Buckminster Fuller, who was being discussed here before, he also traveled in Africa, taught there, and he was studying the basic, you see, the culture and tradition of that, particularly in Ghana. He was studying those. So, the people go there, make sketches, learn, and learn traditions, and try to evolve, you see, their own philosophies. The third thing is related to producing of new knowledge by evaluating existing knowledge. So there should be a constant debate in terms of architecture, that we do not blindly follow the information which is written in the Western tradition. We must be aware of that, but we will have to see our own realities, our own situation, our own problems, and we must evaluate them and suggest new theories which are more closer to our own problems. So in this current scenario, you see, our general education system is generally cut and paste, where we do not, where the minds are absent. Field studies, in most of cases, are not done, because that further the research and that further bring new knowledge if you want to create appropriate designs. So field studies are extremely important. And finally, reading other researchers, as I mentioned, are very important. And in this case, you see, the critical writing must be given more emphasis, because until or unless you do not evaluate, do not study, you are not writing something, you cannot contribute to the other society, your own experiences. So this continuous documentation and writing is extremely important. So considering these factors in mind, uh, we must look into our own abilities. Therefore, we look around and we see that how we can document and present. So in the light of this, it is important that we must review our curriculums so that our students think positively and contribute in a meaningful way. It is therefore important that the aspects which are important, that the faculty must initiate, take initiative and accept these challenges, develop critical thinking among the students, and therefore in all the assignment, they must clearly state the objectives of the courses and achieve, and the process that has to be, you see, followed in the whole design process. Now, in this case, I mean, I would suggest that, I mean, all projects which are given to the student must be based on the real, you see, real projects, field projects, so that student can evaluate the context, problems, people, and other things. So case studies and critical analysis of the work in order to evolve theories, and such studies can use to substantiate the argument. And while teaching, new reading material and case studies may be generated, because that will going to be used by the other people as well. Comparative study, reading, writing on the basis of the primary sources. And the primary sources are extremely important, because in our literature, in our, in our curriculum, we do not stress on the primary sources. You see, the original reports, original books written, or the people who have observed these kind of things. You see, we do not go and try to find original maps, the what was before and what is now, and what changes has taken place over the period of time. So, I mean, in all these process, documentation and publications are important. So basically, my objective is that we will have to develop an analytical and critical abilities to solve and bring innovative solutions to any problem related to our built environment and the natural environment. So in this way, we can proceed. So to summarize this, first of all, the important is that we will have to, you see, aware of all kind of, you see, the information which is come in the form of works, in the form of theories, in the form of. The second important thing is that we will have to travel, we will have to see the other works, the environments, the building, you see, the climate and all kind of things, and the technologies which are, you see, happening. So all these things we take into consideration and then evolve our own philosophies and design. So we must, you see, bring into curriculum the aspects of the critical thinking and evaluation. Thank you very much. Yes, and now over to you.
And thank you, Rahman Saab. So travel, see context and understand the philosophy, go around, get experience and learn how people have been developing their architecture. Very well messaged by you. we see like field work is something which we have to include into our study procedures over here. People should be taught how to do, not people, in fact, our young architects should be taught how to do the field works, do occupancy surveys, look into the precedents and try to see what former researches have been done. But at the same time, I feel like we also have to encourage people doing into empirical studies and start publishing their work so that everyone can take advantage of their research, and we can have a better outcome out of all of this knowledge. Thank you everyone for your precious time. We will now proceed for the question answer session. So there were a couple of questions which I received and they were quite similar. So I'm just gonna brief it out in one question. Dr. Asya, this question is mainly related to you because you did some work in Karachi. Um, uh, we go around and we try to do some research works on projects related to where there could be some sort of a political unease. Considering you worked on Orangi Nala, we want to know what sort of hurdles or challenges you faced while trying to map out the information over there. Were the people or the authorities cooperative enough with you? Did you have to face any sort of issue like where they become super defensive and blocked ways for the researchers, or was it a smooth research work for you?
Thank you, Sana. Yeah. So the way we organized it is you have to be in touch with the communities on site and you have to prepare your fieldwork. So it's one thing to just go around the city, making your observations, taking photographs and so on. But when you're researching a specific topic or a specific place, then it's very, very important to prepare it. Get in touch with the local organizations on site. Through our work at the Department of Architecture at NED, we engage with a lot of city organizations, and there's lots of networks that we're already involved with, so that helps. And therefore I was also mentioning that when you that's part of this pedagogic process and practice, that you have to be outside of the four walls of your classroom or your institution. So in fact, for us, it was not that difficult in the sense that we tapped into our existing networks. We went into the communities with the local activists and local organizations. But for somebody who may not have that already present, I think an important thing is to develop that network, and which basically means getting in touch, winning over people's confidence and trust is very important for them to give you the correct information. Because sometimes people go around, they just give out questionnaires and they go and collect them back. But that may give you empirical data, but it will actually never give you qualitative insights. So, you have to spend time and you have to go many, many times. And you have to go at different times and you have to participate in different activities on site. If there's a festival or some occasion which is happening. Yeah. So all of those things, and you have to go with a very, very open mind. So no preconceived notions and no preconceived ideas. And then you actually start to see the qualities. So we did encounter some things on a daily level, like because Karachi has always had a very volatile political atmosphere. So it is possible that you're in a settlement and something erupts in the city and you may get caught into that. So once again, you have to be very vigilant and alert to that. May have been instances where we did encounter some issues and, somebody taking offense on being photographed, etc. But when you're with the local organizations and local activists, that you can usually avoid. And once people get familiar with you, आप उनसे उनकी ज़बान में बात करते हैं, even small things, मैं कहूँगी कि आप जैसे ड्रेसअप होते हैं या जो आपकी ज़बान आप इस्तेमाल कर, उस सब से बहुत फर्क पड़ता है। हर शहर का एक मिजाज होता है। अगर आप उस मिजाज को समझ जाएं तो आप ब्रेक थ्रू कर सकते हैं। मसलन ब्रसल्स में फ्रेंच बोलते हैं ज़्यादातर, या मैं रिसर्च कर रही हूँ वहाँ टर्किश एंड अरबिक बोली जाती है। I can get by speaking French, मगर उतनी डेप्थ में जाने के लिए, so that's why I rallied then my students, because बहुत से Turkish speaking, Arabic speaking students होते हैं। शक्ल तो हमारी उन जैसी लगती है, मगर वो बात करना चाहते हैं, then they get frustrated, the community, they get frustrated like तुम्हारी शक्ल हमारी जैसी है और ना तुम्हें अरबी आती है ना तुर्किश। So उसमें फिर students and having other colleagues, that team help. So you have to kind of design the process. ये random नहीं होता. You have to और फिर आप उसमें सब्र के साथ, you have to keep that much time for that, and you kind of build on those relations year after year, and then it starts to give you some tangible data.
Yeah, that actually brings my second question, which is actually for everyone, since most of you have the experience of teaching locally and also abroad. So I wanted to ask you, as a teacher, how do you think our institutes are facilitating us to prepare our students properly? Do you think that the resources which we are provided right now currently are enough to teach our students and prepare them for what's there in the practical world?
I think so.
Now, can I?
Sorry.
Yes.
I just jumped in, but मुझे इस पे एक बात याद आई। मैं recently एक हमारी दोस्त हैं कराची में, she's an artist, दुरिया काजी उनका नाम है, quite well known name. मैं उन्हें बता रही थी कि जब हम साउथ कॉलेज में NED यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ा करते थे, बहुत ही बुरे पॉलिटिकल हालात थे कराची के, अक्सर कॉलेज बंद ही रहता था। एंड डॉक्टर साहब वाकिफ हैं, हमारे ज़माने में डीन जो थे कौसर बशीर अहमद, और बहुत हमारे मोटिवेटेड टीचर्स, वी एक्चुअली हैड क्लासेस इन क़ायद आज़म का मज़ार व्हिच वाज नियर बाय, और वी हैड इट इन आवर हाउसेस, और वी हैड देम लिटरली किसी भी ओपन स्पेस में शहर की। And so I think resources and infrastructure to universities में पाकिस्तान में has only gotten better. And बहुत subsidies भी होने लगी हैं, fundings भी होने लगी हैं. So I think yes, I think infrastructure के इतने मसाइल जितनी universities मैंने visit की हैं, और जो कि ज़्यादातर बड़े शहरों में, but कुछ छोटे शहरों में भी या medium sized cities, I think it's the attitude and it's the motivation जिस पे mainly आपको काम करने की ज़रूरत होती है। बाकी so that was my experience कि but teachers were so motivated कि we never felt we were missing anything. So अब तो बहुत बेहतर हालात हैं, अब तो बहुत माँ बाप के पास भी ज़्यादा facilities और पैसे हैं और universities के पास भी. So that's my kind of take. Sorry, I just jumped in. I'm sure others have things to say.
Can I just add something? मैंने पढ़ाया तो सिर्फ UET में था पाकिस्तान में, लेकिन यहाँ पे I did my masters in UK. तो वो जो teaching process सारा है, उसका difference बड़ा clearly नजर आया पाकिस्तान के comparison में यहाँ पे in the UK. I don't know about other universities, but I'm sure Pakistan में भी बहुत dedicated teachers होते हैं, but the way I saw it here is they live and sleep architecture. So वो जो teachers हैं उनको एक तो obviously facilities यहाँ पाकिस्तान के comparison में way more. You get 3D printing and हर किस्म की modeling workshops, facilities, हर तरह की students को available हैं, which is obviously way more than what we have in Pakistan. It is improving, but it's nothing in comparison to what you have here. एक और बहुत अच्छा advantage जो यहाँ पे होता है, it's to do with कि पूरी दुनिया से students आते हैं, and you get to know how their work ethics as well. So यहाँ बहुत Chinese students भी आएंगे, Brazil से, Mexico से, from all over the world. तो वो एक जो interaction होता है ना, you get to know what is happening in different countries, उनकी design approach क्या है, उनका पढ़ने का तरीका कैसा है, उनके softwares कैसे हैं. You know, I was amazed to see China is so far ahead of the rest of the world. जो softwares वो use करते हैं, हम लोगों को कोई knowledge नहीं था वहाँ पे, बाकी सब students को. So it's, you get to know, ये interaction बहुत अच्छा है यहाँ पे. फिर the dedication certainly बहुत that was another level of dedication. What I felt was I was lucky enough to have teachers जिनके लिए this is not just a profession जो सिर्फ कमाने के लिए, या you know, it's not just earning, it is that they actually want to teach you what they have, and to, or obviously research opportunities बहुत ज़्यादा हैं यहाँ पे, and they include students in those. और जैसे सर बात कर रहे थे, सर रहमान इस बात की, and I included that in my presentation as well, कि hypothetical projects नहीं होते हैं यहाँ पे. They give you actual live sites and actual live projects, so you get to know कि वाकई में कॉन्टेक्स्ट क्या है इसका, हिस्टोरिकल बैकग्राउंड क्या है, यहाँ के रहने वालों का कल्चर, एनीवेयर. एंड इट्स नॉट कि सिर्फ लोकल नहीं प्रोजेक्ट्स होते. अगर अमेरिका में प्रोजेक्ट मिला है तो दे टेक यू टू अमेरिका, वो आपको वहाँ साइट पे लेके जाते हैं, एंड दे let you explore what is going on there. यूरोप में तो बहुत आसान है यहाँ से यूरोप जाना, so you get to see other countries, other cities, और वहाँ के live projects कैसे. I was in my masters, I did one project which was based in Dubai, और students ने भी किया, and it was so amazingly different to everything else you experience here, क्योंकि वहाँ का climate, वहाँ का culture, and the religious effects on architecture there are so different to what goes on in here. And it was a learning experience for other people as well, कि वहाँ का culture कैसा है and how they spend their day-to-day life. और इसीलिए हमें it was very interesting to see कि वहाँ जो अभी international style के ये बन रहे हैं, high-rise structure बन रहे हैं, वो वेस्टर्न मॉडल पे बेस्ड हैं, कि यहाँ जैसे वेस्ट में आप एंटर हो दरवाजे से तो आप सीधे लिविंग रूम में घुस जाते हैं. सो और यहाँ पे किचन इज अ पार्ट ऑफ लिविंग रूम, विच certainly is not our culture. और वो the same goes for in Dubai या Middle East में भी. वहाँ तो you, even if they are very advanced, तो वो फिर भी एक men section अलग होगा, वहाँ मेहमान खाना आपका अलग है. और they were surprised to learn all these things because I included them in my design, and it was a learning experience. इसी तरह जो लोग चाइना से आए थे, they had their own approach to it as well. But the good thing I see there is कि वो live projects देते हैं, live sites देते हैं, and they ask you to actually use those contextual details in your design as well. So I think we can learn from that, and we can learn to include it, and especially considering कि हमारा culture इतना rich है इस मामले में, so we can use that. And especially to get those techniques जो historically हम use करते रहे थे अपनी buildings को cool करने के लिए, उनको shaded रखने के लिए, we have lost all that, and we have just gone and हम जो यूरोप को follow करना शुरू कर दिया है. वहाँ का तो, यहाँ का तो climate ऐसा है, we need the light, so we have all these glazed things, but that doesn't go with our culture and context. So I'm sorry, I've taken a lot of the time. So over to you.
This was very interesting to see and hear, and it actually made me a bit nostalgic and reminded me of the time when, as a student, I went for a project in Sao Paulo, and how when we went there, we found out, I mean, we knew, but it was very different for us that they have the northern sun, not the south sun. So everything becomes very different. Yeah, but you only understand it when you're there and you experience one of their places. So this is something I think we also have to include. Dr. Samia, I also want to hear your opinion on this.
So as you could see from my presentation, my opinion is going to be very provocative. Yeah. So I'm going to kind of take a totally different turn, and I have taken that turn. I am not the same person before the pandemic. I think the only way I can honor the millions who have died is never to do the things I used to do the way I used to do them unthinkingly. So To the students, I have only one message. Be well and happy. Listen, observe, act. Don't read theories. Make theories based on your personal, humane acceptance and justu of putting mind, body, and soul within a context in the most authentic way you can. And only you should guide that interaction between your mind, body, and soul. No other human in the world should dictate how you think and how you connect your mind to your body. Only you. You master you, then you can help others. Just like they say in the airplane, when the oxygen mask comes down, first put it on you, then on your child. Do not try to help anyone until you've helped yourself in an authentic way. Connect with your body, connect with your mind, do the empirical analysis of you, deliver you in the project. Do not listen to instructors. Do not think about architectural pedagogy. Do not think about it, just do it in action. How will you be able to do co-design? Only if you know you have the capacity to listen to others, to know them, to know what they want for their bodies, their mind, and their soul. If you are a fort, you can help others. That's my only message. You know you deliver you. You listen, you observe, you act. Agency. Language is a very important thing. There is no word for architect in Arabic or Sanskrit. And these are two our heritages. Persian, Arabic, yes, but also Sanskrit. Our civilization predates Islam. That's all our heritage. Mohenjo-daro is our heritage. That is the first example of urban design where public space was prioritized against private space. Private dwellings were also very good. They had flush water running into each house. It wasn't that it was not taken seriously, but priority was given to the public bath, places of collectivity. So know your heritage holistically and know you authentically. And then you will be able to gain anyone's trust, because if you know you want to know the other. It's when we don't know ourselves, we want to just try to copy and paste. So the only way out of this is you know you control the link between your body and your mind and your soul. You create a beautiful, happy environment. Ultimately, you want to be happy. If you are not happy, if you do not take care of your well-being, if you are working in an architectural studio 24 hours, no way you will be able to help anyone.
Yeah.
You have to be a happy human being, holistic, authentic human being to make a difference in the planet world. And the only way you can gain trust is by deep listening. Definitely, it is important to go into the community. I wouldn't say looking like them, but being authentically you, and do deep listening. Deep listening means that you try and understand the other.
Yeah.
And that's my only message, really. Theory can go out the window. Just do it. Do you.
Yes.
Totally agree. I think a lot of students in the session would happily agree with this. And they'll be like, Okay. We are going to be us now.
Yes, but
That's
that's
what
what
method.
that's what we need. We don't need
Yeah.
clones. We don't need clones. Paying respect
We
to
need originality.
we need thinkers. I mean, skills. जैसे वो कह रही थी आमना चौधरी अपनी प्रेजेंटेशन में कि स्किल तो हर हफ्ते बदल जाती है और एक हफ्ते में आप सीख के उसको अप्लाई कर सकते हैं. It's the critical mindset. And जैसे सामिया कह रही हैं कि जब आपके अंदर वो कॉन्फिडेंस होता है, absolutely when you are authentic, people sense it. यानी जबान ना भी आती हो तो भी वो साथ लिंक हो जाते हैं. People sense yeah, honesty to purpose. And जो आपका सवाल था सना कि students कैसे differ करते हैं university. I teach in an international master program. सारी दुनिया से आते हैं बच्चे, European, non-European, and I have seen one commonality. They're all looking for that authenticity. They're all looking for a way of understanding the world around them. Infrastructures और चीजें यकीनन सबकी universities में कुछ ना कुछ different होती होंगी, but they are essentially looking for that contact. They are looking for that a teacher who's willing to be a partner or a like a team member. And initially they are actually thrown off because they expect instructions, they expect a framework. And when I don't give that, there was actually मेरी शिकायतें लगी हैं डीन्स ऑफिस में कि ये कैसी टीचर है, शायद इसको पढ़ाना नहीं आता है, ये क्या कर रही है, ये तो हमें बस ले गई. And she said, okay, observe, make your own observations and kind of critical views on it, and we'll come back and discuss. And you project, you make the project, you propose the project. And we had, of course, the dean, etc., knew what I was up to. And by the end they were graduating, they were changed people. And this I've seen both in NED, Karachi में मैंने कई schools of architecture में पढ़ाया है, and यहाँ with this international group of students, कि वो एक certain struggle common है. और अगर आप उस struggle को support दे देते हैं as a senior कह रहे हैं, somebody with more experience, and you give the kind of, you point the direction, and people find their ways and actually come up with very, very innovative, both here and back home. So मुझे तो कभी कोई फर्क नहीं महसूस हुआ with the 10 साल हो रहे हैं तकरीबन यहाँ पे भी काम करते हुए. So I feel it's more about values than the infrastructures around.
Thank you so much, Asia. We have Ali Akazi right now with us in the audience. He joined the session and he's still listening to us. He's a graduate of NCA, a former president of IAP. And if he's still with us, I would like if you would give us some, of his feedback on the session and what he thinks about architecture pedagogy. You are muted at the moment. If you can unmute yourself, we'll be able to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Great. This is a wonderful session. I'm glad that I could see some old faces, some colleagues, some people from from a former institution. NCA, of course, Samia is there, and Abdul Rahman Sahab is there, and I, of course, Lady Asia se kabhi mulaqat nahi rahi, but I've heard about your work and familiar with what you do, and of course Amna Shahid and Sana, you of course. I want to thank Yasmin Maan at the Lahore College for Women for arranging this wonderful webinar. We've been having so many of these webinars. I think Dr. Saab probably not partner liya of the Rahman Saab keh rahe the ki shayad kam hai, but IAP and other forums have been at it, and it's glad. I think it is this synergy, this overall tool that we found out during this COVID, of being able to get in touch with each other and get to hear perspectives so far off, which previously we were just not tapping into. I think this is really wonderful that we've got this new medium to work and interact on, and I can really see सामने ने बहुत सी वही बातें की जो हम as students we used to talk about, that we have to really get in touch with ourselves. So I think any design program and any teaching exercise starts with your inner core itself. First, सबसे पहले आप अपने साथ सच बोलें, फिर दूसरों के साथ आप behave भी अच्छा करेंगे, लोगों के साथ सच बोल पाएंगे. And of course, Amna Shahid's view on things was very practical, very down to earth. I sometimes feel that at bachelor's level, especially, we must equip our students with the basics of the profession too. It's a professional degree. It's like a doctor coming out of doing his MBBS or MD, and if he's not able to give his first injection or take the blood pressure or do a basic thing, then doesn't really serve the purpose. So an architect, it's not a matter of calling him an architect, you're making him into a draftsman. Not at all. An architect, like Amna said, there has to be able to quickly go into the field and be able to do the practical aspects of it. And your whole life is there. That's just the basic stepping stone. And you should be able to, whether you want to go into academics or practice yourself or join a good practice, you should have the basic sort of tools to start off with. And then wherever life takes you, you want to teach, or you want to, philosophize, or you want to, paint, or whatever you want to do. It's such a wonderful education, the education of architecture, that really tells you how to look at life. And then the professional part requires that you have at least the basic skill set to come out and join the profession for a start. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you everyone, all the speakers, fellow colleagues and students who stayed with us during the session. I'm very obliged to Dr. Samia, Asya, Amna Shahid and Amna Rafi for giving us their valuable time. Really appreciate all of your efforts. For all my listeners and the audience who were with us in this session, we will be publishing the proceedings of this webinar. So please keep an eye out on our all social media platforms for the updates and the news on the upcoming session. I will request Ma'am Yasmin to give ending note now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sana. If I express how proud I am to listen to these leaders in construction industry representing the women folk of Pakistan, Rahman Saab knows me well. I am the sort who gets happy like you, Dr. Samia, and you just said, if you're happy, you really have to be happy. So, I am proud and happy to the depths of my heart to see these wonderful women leaders. And the point that I was so happy upon this was that you all are institutions in yourselves for our students. I mean, this is the terminal point that I dream for my graduates, that they go out in the world and make their names like you all have made. Starting off from Dr. Abdul Rahman Saab, Dr. Samia, Dr. Asya, Amna Chaudhary and Amna Shahid. Amna Shahid is, by the way, very close senior to myself. We were together in UET just with the difference of a year. So I know her instincts of being a socially responsible architect since her graduation time. But it's like, it's a blessing to our students that they have interacted. They have come to know that how Pakistani women are making their names with so much of genuine sense for built environment. I mean, all the dimensions were excellent, and it was like the words in our mouth and our heart, you all were expressing it in a very modified technical way. In the last, I would love to share a small segment with you. It will not take very long, but I was waiting since very long to share it. It will just take very few. I know it's been quite a long session. Some of the students have already this is something that really touched my heart. Dr. Abdul Rahman Saab one day sent me a text. And, you know, in this period of social media communication, some of the times you see something very attentively, and at times you just pass the slide. But this text just, you know, there are some words that really catch your heart. So this was a quotation from the book of Hazrat Abdul Qadir Jalani, Secret of Secrets. Sir, am I right? Am I taking the right name? And the quote was, a spiritual teacher is not a true teacher unless he possesses 12 qualities. 2 of these qualities are from the attributes of Allah Most High. They are to hide the faults of man and the rest of creation, not only from others, but even from themselves, and to have compassion and forgiveness for even the worst of sins. 2 qualities are inherited from the Prophet Muhammad, love and gentleness, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from Hazrat Abu Bakr, the first of 4 caliphs. A true teacher inherits truthfulness, honesty and sincerity, as well as devotion and generosity. From Hazrat Umar, justice and imposing the right and preventing the wrong. From Hazrat Uthman, humility and staying awake and praying while the rest of mankind are asleep. From Hazrat Ali, knowledge and courage. So this was something that I wanted to share at a collective forum. I've been sharing this with my students too. Every word means treasure of knowledge. So with this mindset, I encourage my students as well. A lot of students are still here. Can you guys turn on your screens? आप लोग videos on कर सकते हैं? I just need you to wave all our worthy honorable speakers today. Can you guys turn on your videos? Collectively wave a really big thank you to all the instructors, and see they are your role models.
Thank you so much. It's so good to see you all.
Yeah.
Screens on हो जाएं तो wave करें सब लोग.
Thank you.
Mostly
Okay,
girls,
girls.
like all
Yes, all
universities in
girls.
Pakistan.
Mashallah, mashallah.
So start waving, girls.
Thank you for screen on. I was going to request that as well. And design your 4x4. That's all I can say.
So thank you all. With this, we call our session off. Thank you so much, Dr. Abdul Rahman Saab, Mr. Ali Qazi Saab, Ms. Sana for moderating today, all our faculty members and our lovely students. Thank you, and we wish to see you again and hope this interaction goes on. Thank you.
Inshallah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rahman. Thank you.
Thank you, Roxanne. Thank you for bringing us all together.
Yeah, good to meet you all. Let's work.
It was really nice.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, we should keep in touch. Dr. Saab, I think one of the initiating things that we hope for this discussion to continue.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. So let's stay in touch.
Yeah, this was an amazing platform.
You all.